Hello everyone, and welcome once again to another arbitrary ranking video about a Star Trek thing, and today we're ranking the chief engineers from the Star Trek franchise. Though, I have to make a quick disclaimer here because last time in my video about medical officers, I didn't include Dr. Tana from Lower Decks as I considered her a minor character and she didn't get much focus, but lo and behold, wouldn't you know it, in Lower Decks Season 2, suddenly she got some real focus in a bunch of episodes, and originally, I was going to do the same here with Billups until Lower Decks Season 2 had basically an entire Billups-centric episode, pretty much. So, as a kind of blanket statement for the Lower Decks characters, I'll be giving them all honourable mentions at the very least. I'm very curious about Billups' character following the revelation of his royal heritage and how he gave it all up to be a Starfleet engineer. That's something very admirable as a character trait, and from what we've seen of Billups' incredibly wholesome personality, there's a lot to like about the character as well, but I feel like we still don't know enough about most of the bridge crew of the Cerritos for me to confidently rank those characters alongside the others, so as for now, Billups and Tana retroactively will get an honourable mention. Which means first on our list at the bottom, as much as it truly pains me to do this, it's Montgomery Scott. Now, I know, how can I say he's the worst? Well, as another blanket statement, I should say, I don't think any of the chief engineer characters are bad, and of course we all love Scotty, but as I've said many times before, as iconic as the original series cast are, most of them don't really have much depth outside of the main trio of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. Even in the Kelvin timeline, Scotty's mostly functions as comic relief. The one time Scotty was given some really rich material was in TNG's Relics. It's a great episode, and James Doohan gives easily his best performance as the character, but outside of that though, Scotty is a pretty two-dimensional character. Don't get me wrong, Doohan's performance is very charismatic and Scotty's personality is endlessly enjoyable, but being a likeable character doesn't always mean being a rich character, so I'm afraid Scotty is placed at the bottom here. Above Scotty, however, is Jet Reno from Star Trek Discovery. Now, Discovery characters are always difficult to put on these lists because the characters on that show don't always slot neatly into the defined roles of the previous Trek shows, but I think it's pretty safe to say at this point that Jet Reno is the chief engineer of the ship, while Stamets and Tilly are more like science officers with some crossover engineering skills. I think Tig Notaro is an absolute scene stealer in the show. I do agree with the criticism that Discovery can be overdramatic at times, which is why Notaro giving Reno a totally relaxed, nonchalant attitude is so refreshing. We also get the impression, since Reno was essentially marooned when her original ship crashed, she may have gone a bit funny in isolation, and her slight bumbling might be her trying to relearn how to interact with people again. As I just mentioned though, being a likeable character doesn't mean being a rich character necessarily, and that's why I rank Reno above Scotty, only just because I think there's potential here. On several occasions in Discovery, we've seen some classic Starfleet officer traits in Reno. Her capacity for self-sacrifice, the way she helped Stamets during his panic attack. It's delivered in a blunt way, but I do feel like there's more to Reno than simply good humour. So while she is quite low on the list, I feel like she could go up a few places in the future. Next up is jordy LaForge, and again, this may seem quite low for some people, but again, while I feel like LaForge is an iconic character and has more depth than the previously mentioned characters on the list, I don't feel like Geordi ever really got those great standout episodes many of the other characters in TNG got. Geordi never really got his Measure of a Man or his Tapestry or his Pegasus. A lot of Geordi-centric episodes are quite mixed. There are decent ones like The Mind's Eye and Identity Crisis and the aforementioned Relics, which is great, but then there's also stuff like Galaxy's Child and Booby Trap and Aquael, which don't serve the character very well. Funnily enough, I feel like the best stuff Geordi got was actually in a lot of data-centric episodes. Overall, he's an enjoyable character and LeVar Burton gave a great performance, but I never felt like the character of Geordi LaForge ever fully lived up to his potential, unfortunately. Now, this may be controversial, but above Geordi, I have Bolana Torres. Now, I was kind of surprised at myself for putting her here because I've always had a bit of an issue with Bolana. As I mentioned in my Voyager retrospective, so many of her episodes are about her struggle with her Klingon heritage, and these episodes become so repetitive and formulaic. They basically tell the exact same story and have the same plot structure again and again, and it just feels a bit redundant. That being said, There are loads of other great Bolana episodes, especially early on like Dreadnought and Prototype and the later Juggernaut. What I really like about Bolana is that you can really tell how much she loves her work. She can have a temper and be very stubborn, but whenever she gets stuck into some new bit of technology or has some kind of engineering problem to solve aboard ship, you can really see the passion the character has in Roxanne Dawson's performance. Which is why, ultimately, I think she got a bit closer to reaching her full potential than jordy LaForge did. I still think the writing for the character had its issues, but also I think in terms of a batting average, Bolana had more successes than failures. But second from the top, we have Charles Tripp Tucker III from Enterprise. Now, I think even people who don't like Enterprise acknowledge how good Tripp is as a character. He's one of the few elements in the show which was truly great right from the start. I think Archer and T'Pol took some time to really come into their own, but Tripp was a success right away. I think Connor Trenier is very underrated as a really standout character actor. There's a great wee short film I watched recently, which he did with Robert Picardo called Ben Frankly on YouTube, which I highly recommend. But Tripp is awesome. He has that salt-of-the-earth wisdom, which is kind of like Leonard McCoy. He's got the laid-back attitude of Jet Reno, that distinct and memorable personality of Scotty, the passion for his work that Bolana has, and the terrible track record with women that Jordy has. I would honestly like to see the Enterprise cast get some kind of mention or cameo in modern Trek, like a lot of other people have, but especially Tripp because he's just great. Which means, number one, I think you all saw this coming, it has to be Miles O'Brien from Deep Space Nine. While Tripp and Reno had a down-to-earth quality to them, O'Brien is literally just some working-class bloke who happens to be caught up in this epic space opera. More than anyone, O'Brien truly is the everyman. Nothing in his life is quite perfect. His work is tough and challenging, his marriage has plenty of ups and downs, but, of course, that's what makes it all feel so authentic. That's what made his friendship with Julian so strong, and even his relationship with Keiko shine, when they actually had time together. He's this total blue-collar guy, always with his sleeves rolled up and with tools hanging out of his pockets, just so relatable and flawed and human. That's why the writers seem to delight in putting him through absolute hell, because with O'Brien it all had an extra layer of tragedy to it, that this was happening to a perfectly ordinary guy. It also made O'Brien's moments of heroism all the more crowd-pleasing because of the huge hurdles he had to clear to accomplish them, yet at the same time his blunt, man-of-action style approach, no time for philosophical debates, directly fed into the moral complexity of Deep Space Nine's best stories. Just the perfect combination of actor, character, and writer, which is why O'Brien is the best chief engineer character in Star Trek. At least in my opinion. Who would you rank at number 1? Do you agree with my list? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments down below. Now this is where I usually have the Q&A segment, and this is a question I've gotten a lot recently from a lot of people on several videos, so I just wanted to answer it here. What are your thoughts on the Babylon 5 reboot from J. Michael Straczynski at the CW? Obviously, after this announcement, my video on should Babylon 5 get a reboot suddenly got a lot more views and comments, and I keep getting this asked in my Discord or community tab. Unfortunately, my answer may be quite underwhelming, which is to say, I am going to wait and see. I'm certainly interested, of course. I didn't think this would be happening anytime soon, but I don't really have much to go on. J. Michael Straczynski did a great thread on his Twitter talking about his creative approach to this reboot, which sounds really intriguing, but I'm not really going to make any judgments until I see more. I've seen some people saying they're concerned about it being on the CW, as that network is often thought of as a teen drama type network, and I know not everyone likes the Arrowverse stuff, but to that I'd simply say, we didn't judge the original Babylon 5 based on the Primetime Entertainment Network's other shows, or TNT's other shows, so I don't really think it's fair to do that with this new show on the CW. According to JMS, the higher-ups at the CW are big Babylon 5 fans, so maybe he's found exactly the right kind of people to help him achieve what he wants to do with this new show. But in general, I am really interested and certainly optimistic, but I'm going to have to wait until actually seeing this new show before judging it. Thank you for watching. If you like these videos, subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay up to date on my new uploads. If you want to help the channel grow, join my patrons or my YouTube members, where you can see videos early as well as some other exclusive content. Speaking of which, I'd like to quickly thank all of my patrons and members who are now appearing on screen. Have a good one, and as always, live long and prosper.